Billions of flying bugs have swarmed parts of Africa and Asia, destroying any crops in their path. Can they be stopped? As you read, think about how the rapid growth of an organism's population can affect an ecosystem. In 2018, a population of winged insects called desert locusts suddenly exploded in an isolated region of the vast Arabian Desert in Western Asia. Storms had soaked the normally dry area with rain, causing plants to grow. With plentiful food available, the locusts began to breed. It was a disaster in the making for the people living in the region. Monstrous swarms of locusts can contain billions of the insects and stretch over hundreds of miles. When these huge groups take flight, they sweep across any vegetation in sight. A relatively small swarm of 40 million desert locusts can eat the same amount of food in a day that 35,000 people can consume. These ravenous insects can destroy a whole season's crop in a single morning, spelling serious trouble for farmers. Keith Cressman is a locust forecasting expert at the United Nations Food and Agricultural Organization based in Rome, Italy. He had been monitoring the unusual rain in the Arabian Desert and had a hunch a massive locust invasion was on the horizon. We started to see wave and waves of locust swarms fly out of the remote area into the neighboring countries of Yemen and Saudi Arabia, says Cressman. That's when I knew something really bad had happened. Throughout 2019 and 2020, the swarms erupted from the Arabian Desert and descended upon the Middle East, spreading southwest into Africa and as far east as India and Pakistan. Back-to-back seasons of heavy rain have fueled these continuous swarms, leading to the largest locust invasion in decades. If the swarms continue, they stand to threaten the food supply of millions of people and the livelihoods of 10% of the world's population. Locust swarms don't happen often. In fact, they occur only when the insects undergo a remarkable transformation. In small numbers, locusts are harmless, says Hojin Song, an entomologist and insect scientist at Texas A&M University. The bugs don't move around much and mostly avoid one another. Scientists call this the locust solitary phase. But when the locust population starts to grow in response to changing conditions in their environment, like they did in the Arabian Desert in 2018, the insects go through a dramatic change. Their colors shift from dark green to bright yellow and black. The insects also group together and become more active. When a locust transforms, it's like the Hulk, says Song. The insects enter a gregarious or social phase. They form swarms, and for a single purpose, finding food. For thousands of years, no one realized that green, solitary locusts and yellow, gregarious locusts were the same species. A Russian scientist named Boris Uvarov made the discovery in 1920, when he raised locusts in two different environments, alone or in crowded cages. When by themselves, the locusts stayed calm and docile, but when packed together, they switched to their destructive black and yellow form. This ability to transform is an adaptation that helps locusts survive in the harsh desert environment, where food is often scarce. Grouping into a fast-swarming and determined swarm gives them a better chance of locating something to eat. This adaptation is good for the insects, but bad for people. The best way to stop swarms is to detect locust breeding hotspots early. Then measures can be taken to reduce the number of insects before their population grows out of control. That's why locust forecasters like Cressman work to predict where outbreaks will occur. He gathers information about Earth's surface using satellite images, a technique called remote sensing. In particular, he looks at images taken with cameras that detect green wavelengths of light. These colors indicate the presence of plants. Patches of green in the desert, for example, are warning signs of impending locust booms. That's what Cressman saw in the Arabian Desert in 2018. But because the region was so hard to reach, it was difficult for locust survey teams to respond quickly. When a team arrived to assess the situation almost 9 months later, it was too late. The swarms were already on the move. Now, says Cressman, the goal is to minimize the destruction caused by the locust until drier weather returns. Then, the insect numbers will die down naturally. To try to hold back the swarms, affected countries send teams in to the countryside to search for locusts. Once the bugs are spotted, a plane blankets the area with pesticides. Some nations like India are also using small flying robots called drones for both locust surveillance and spraying. But not all regions have the resources to mount an effective response to the swarms. Many of the hardest hit countries are also dealing with other crises, from political unrest to the coronavirus pandemic. As a result, locusts have continued to multiply and spread. It's becoming increasingly clear that no country can succeed in battling the locust infestation on its own, says Cressman. Instead, he says it will take a global effort. In May 2020, the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration joined in the fight by repurposing technology originally designed to track smoke from wildfires to track locusts instead. The technology works by forecasting wind patterns, which can help predict where the swarms will travel next. Scientists are developing biopesticides to make fighting locusts safer as well. These natural substances, which include certain fungi, kill locusts, but unlike toxic pesticides, they are harmless to people and most other creatures. Biopesticides are exciting tools because there is much less environmental damage, says Rick Overson, a biologist at Arizona State University who studies ways to substantially manage locusts. Overson hopes these and other scientific discoveries will better equip people to combat locusts going forward. Some countries hadn't experienced an outbreak of this size for 70 years and were left scrambling to find ways to beat back the bugs. The best method to prevent a similar disaster in the future, Overson says, is to be prepared. When it comes to a locust outbreak, you need to catch it early. It's very hard to control once it gets out of hand.